Shalakaya Chakshuanmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namini Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharini Vishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Sri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama Rama Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Jaya Gauranitai, 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 Nitai Gaura Hariva, 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 Gaura Hariva. Jai Jai Prabhupada,
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Nivase Shaswati Krishna Hare Krishna Caitanya Caritamrta Nivase Shivasari Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Om Adhyanaminandasya Janardana Salakaya Chaksutsamelatam Dena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Sri Caitanya Caritamrta Stapitam Dena Utale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sapadantika Vansakopatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubheva Patitanam Pavineda Vaishnavyo Namo Namah Hare Krishna. So they've returned you from the East Coast. Did they cry when you left? What's the T-shirt? Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Every time you Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. I know what yours says.
Huh? Taxation is legalised there.
Yes. Hare Krishna. We are hearing the pastime of Sakshi Gopal, where the Lord with his associates going to Jagannath Puri is at the Sakshi Gopal temple and hearing the pastime of Sakshi Gopal. And this pastime of Sakshi Gopal is, as we know, the young Brahmin and the old Brahmin were on pilgrimage, and the young Brahmanas naturally served the older Brahmana because in a cultured society that's quite natural. One of the reasons why it's natural and why it's so unnatural in today's society, today's culture, is because in the old days, in a more cultured society, the elderly people were the repository, the reservoir of culture, and they had the wisdom of having gone through life already, and they were wise in the ways of the world, perhaps wise in spiritual life, because they could see what one is going through in life in perspective of an entire life, as opposed to the part of life, seeing what we're going through in the part of life that we're going through right now. The elderly they have their wisdom, but they've been through that already, so they know that things go on, and this is just a part. So one of the reasons why the young take care of the elderly, the younger take care of the elderly, is so that naturally in the exchange the wisdom is passed down, the wisdom that they have garnered through years and years and years of life. They pass that down to the younger ones, so the younger ones don't have to learn everything just by their mistakes, because they have the guidance of those who have been there before, been on the trail before. And the second reason, there are certain aspects of the culture, you could say the history of one's community or whatever. So that's also passed down. So we had the opportunity to associate with Prabhupada, at least to some degree, and because Prabhupada was born in 1896, so when he grew up in a completely different culture. He grew up in a culture that was so much more connected to the ancient culture, because now everything is changing and has changed so fast. He grew up in a culture where India had changed very little, in a sense, or the better parts especially was still they were much intact. So we got a glimpse of what that culture was like, even though it was from the distance, because he would have associated with people, say, from who were in the world and active in 1850, or even somewhat before that. So he would get the viewpoint of the world from their perspective, and those people were carrying the perspective from people who were, say 50 years earlier. So in that way you're getting a modernized, a more modernized version or contemporaryized version of something that is very ancient and sacred being passed down. So this naturally happens when the elderly are kept. And now I'm not saying this is an advertisement for myself, by the way. I'm just saying this is just a point. Because all of you already kindly take care of me. Vasadam picks the figs.
You're not that old, are you?
I'm not that old. I'm eternal, after all. So the younger Brahmana served the elderly Brahmana, and the elderly Brahmana felt so satisfied, so he wanted to give something dear to him. So that's exactly what happens when people take care of you with kindness, and not just because it's official and duty, because they actually want to help and take care of you. Then naturally the heart softens and the heart melts, and naturally you want to give them what you have. So he gave him his daughter in charity. He just wanted to give him something that was dear to him. So he offered him his daughter in charity, and the young Brahmana understood there was such a disparity between the difference between the older Brahmana's social status and education and his own, that it wouldn't be acceptable. But yet the elderly Brahmana promised this in front of the Gopal deity, and the young Brahmana actually said to the Gopal deity that you've heard this now, and if there's any problem, I'm going to call you as a witness. And at that point Gopal didn't answer, but later on soon he will answer. So when then they got back to their town, the younger Brahmana kept on serving him the whole way back, and then when they got there to their town, they went their different ways, and eventually, after some time had passed, the older Brahmana told his family that he had promised in front of the deity that to give his daughter in charity in an arranged marriage charity to the younger Brahmana and his parents. If we would use contemporary talk, they flipped out, or what would be something even more contemporary than that? They went bonkers, something like that. Yeah, they went bonkers. Last week they went bonkers. This week they flipped out. But what's really contemporary for having a meltdown or something like that? There's no one in touch. Howard, he lost it. He really lost it. His family lost it. They how do you say in Hindi? Proper Hindi or Punjabi or? Never mind. In any case, they went bonkers. They flipped out and they lost it. And they said, "If you do this, we're going to commit suicide. We're going to drink poison and die." And he naturally didn't want that to happen. So his eldest son, who was atheistical and bahut chalu hai. He was very clever. Within that there is dishonesty. So he wasn't quite straightforward. So he said, you don't have to lie," and because he didn't want to lie. The man was so pious, he didn't want to tell a lie. And that's so old-fashioned, isn't it? That he didn't want to tell a lie, because that would be considered impious, improper to tell a lie. So the young Brahmin, his oldest son, said, "You don't have to lie, just say you don't remember." So then very soon after that, the so many brahmanas. There's eldest sons and old brahmanas and young brahmanas. So the older brahmanas, the younger brahmana came and said, you had promised me in front of the deity, now you've not done anything. And the older brahmana, in the presence of his eldest son, said, I can't exactly remember. And the son came and drove him, the younger brahman, away with a stick and said, criticizing, well, who do you think you are, marrying our daughter, my sister? And you're in a low class, poor, uneducated, she's aristocratic. So in this way, the younger brahmana called a meeting the next day, because this is how things were decided. Even I think it's still even existent in India. They call it Gram Panchayat. There's a group. Yeah, it's a villagey way to decide things, so you don't have to go to court. And so nowadays it's political, but in the older days, they were the elderly and wise and respected and trusted members of the community. 5 of them would be called together when there's a problem, and whatever they said, everyone accepted, because they were elderly, they were trusted, and they were impartial. Nowadays it's more politics, these kind of and how, because you get more bribes if you're in charge. But in those days, the village disputes were settled in this very simple way, without the lawyers and without the court cases going on and on and on, and the great expense. So he called the villagers together, and he explained what had happened, that the older brahmana had promised me, and now he's not doing anything. Ask him why. So they called that family together, and they asked him why, and he said, I can't exactly remember saying it. And then the young brahman, the old brahmana's eldest son, he came and said, this boy is such a liar, he's a cheat, my father had money with him, he poisoned him, stole the money, and now he's claiming my daughter. And the younger brahmana said, this isn't true at all, he promised in front of the deity. And you know what? The deity, we've already said that the deity is going to be the witness in case there's a disagreement, because I expected there was going to be a disagreement. So I'll call the deity as a witness, and Shaksha Gopal is a huge deity. I'll call him as a witness, and everyone will accept what he says, because he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that's where we left off last week, and now we shall continue. So when the elderly brahmana heard this, he immediately confirmed that this is true. He said, and if Gopal personally comes here to serve as a witness, I shall surely give my daughter to the young brahmana. So this was his way, of the older brahmana's way of getting things settled, because he was a theist, and he thought Krishna can come, he will come, because we've asked him to come. Gopal will come. And then, so the young brahmana, with full faith, said, let's call him, and we will accept what he says. And the older brahmana, even though superficially on the other side, was not on the other side, and he agreed. And then the younger brahmana, the older brahmana's eldest son, he also agreed. And he said, this is a very nice settlement. Why did he agree to it? Everyone agreed, but why did he agree? His motivation, his thought, his consciousness was completely the opposite of the other two. His consciousness was that the deity is going to come here. Very unlikely. Very unlikely. So therefore I'll agree, he'll never come, and therefore we won't have to lower our family's prestige, because the deity won't come. And here's Prabhupada's purport. As the super soul, now listen very carefully, as the super soul within the hearts of all living entities, Krishna knows everyone's desire, everyone's request, and everyone's prayer. Now what do you think about that? When you hear that, what do you think? I heard a mumble somewhere. Yes. Yes, inconceivable. What else? Oh no, that was more what I was thinking. Oh no. And anyone else? What this? Yeah, and that he's there's a truth, an underlying truth that's everything else rests upon, that understands all the different aspects of reality. And every living being, every living entity, he knows everyone's desire, everyone's request, and everyone's prayer. Now, if you actually would take this transcendental knowledge very seriously, it could completely change your life. That one sentence. But the purport goes on. There were three things that Prabhupada said Krishna knows, that the Supreme Lord knows. Who can say one of them? Everyone's prayer, everyone's desires, requests. That's all three. Now, it doesn't mean that he's going to respond and he's got someone there writing down everyone's requests and prayers and desires, and we have to fulfill this in this way. It doesn't quite mean that you get exactly what you want. He's not like Santa Claus in that sense. Of course, there is Santa Claus. But what does it mean? Listen to what Prabhupada says next. It's very interesting. Although all these may be contradictory, the Lord has to create a situation in which everyone will be pleased. Very interesting. Now, in what sense these may be contradictory? Because perhaps I want Vasudham's stocks to go down and mine to go up, and he wants my stocks to go, except neither of us have any stocks, but he wants my stocks to go down and his to go up. And he's praying and sincerely requesting and sincerely desiring something that's completely opposite and contradictory to what I'm sincerely praying and desiring. So in this way, that everyone in the world has their desires. Not only human beings have their desires, all living entities have their desires, because the bird is desiring. You see them sometimes here. We see a lot of the birds are in the trees, and they have politics going on between one species and another, and the parrots come and drive away the hawks, but the hawks aren't down there. In Vrindavan I've seen, because hawks are big and parrots are relatively small, but parrots are very, very social, and they have groups. So I've seen parrots attacking, drive away hawks. I've seen parrots attacking, drive away snakes. So they have desires too. All the animals have desires. We have a bandicoot here who desires going. We put prasadam out there for him. Remnants, he desires to eat that. In any case, but all the desires that all the different living entities may contradict each other. So how does Krishna deal with that? If he hears everyone's desires, he has to create a situation in which everyone will be pleased. So Krishna, his desire on one level is to fulfill the desires of every living entity, because this is what they think will make them happy. So in the material world, everyone has their independent desires, with themselves imagined as the center. So all the desires are centered around me, as if I was the central point of existence, and so therefore there's a lot of contradictory desires in the material world. because everyone is thinking of them as the center. But Krishna is so kind. Being in everyone's heart, he tries to fulfill everyone's desires. Now, when that really becomes interesting, in the material world it's very complicated, because everyone's desires are based on themselves being in the center, so they're going to be contradictory to another person's desire. But as soon as someone turns to Krishna, or even desires, even if someone desires to turn to Krishna, Krishna hears that. And then the results of that, desire, request, what was the third one? Pray. So if one desires, requests, or prays, even if it's something a little indirect in that way, so someone doesn't know that or accept that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but oh Supreme Lord, oh great one, whatever, but let me serve you, let me get closer to you, let me know your desire. So even if someone doesn't know Krishna, Krishna will reciprocate with that. And tatra loyam api mula mekalam. If one has a very strong desire to be with Krishna, to serve Krishna, he will reciprocate with that, but he'll reciprocate with any desire, and in that way living entities move step by step towards him. But Krishna's desire, and this is a point that's so essential in this regard, is to please everyone, to fulfill the desires of everyone, but not necessarily in the way that we want. Because sometimes when he's very kind, he gives us what we need as opposed to what we want, what's best for us. Like there's little children, and the little children only want, their desires are only on the level of, I want some candy. But the wise, experienced parent, he knows that you need a more broad diet than that. So he doesn't fulfill the desires only what we want, but he gives what's good for us sometimes too. So this is an instance, Prabhupada's going back to the specific pastime here. This is an instance of a marriage negotiation between an elderly Brahmana and a youthful one. The elderly Brahmana was certainly willing to give his daughter in charity to the young Brahmana, but his son and relatives became impediments to this transaction. The elderly Brahmana considered how to get out of this situation and still offer his daughter to the young Brahmana. His son, an atheist and a very cunning fellow, was thinking of how to stop the marriage. The father and son were thinking in a contradictory way, yet Krishna created a situation wherein they agreed. They both agreed that if the Gopal deity would come and serve as a witness, the daughter would be given to the young Brahmana. Continuing, the elderly Brahmana thought, since Lord Krishna is very merciful, he will certainly come to prove my statement. Very simple-hearted and pure, and understanding the very nature of Krishna. He's merciful. And the atheistic son thought, Putre Ramane, it is not possible for Gopal to come and bear witness. Thinking thus, the father and son agreed. The young Brahmana took this opportunity to speak. He said, please write this down on paper in black and white, so that you may not again change your word of honor. All the assembled people got this statement down in black and white, and taking the signatures of agreement from both of them, served as the mediators. The young Brahmana then said, "Will all of you gentlemen present please hear me? This elderly Brahmana is certainly truthful and is following religious principles. He had no desire to break his promise, but fearing that his kinsman would commit suicide, he deviated from the truth. By the piety of the elderly Brahmana, I shall call the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a witness, and thus I shall keep his truthful promise intact." And hearing this emphatic statement of the younger Brahmana, some atheists in the meeting began to cut jokes. They began to laugh. However, someone else said, "After all, the Lord is merciful, and if he likes, he can come." Now, which side would you have been on? I'm not going to ask you, don't worry. Huh? Yeah, in the middle. I haven't made up my mind yet, so there's 3. I abstain. Well, the young Brahmana and the old Brahmana were clear. But here is the point here. The Lord is merciful. If he likes, he can come. And then the question becomes, well, does he like to come? Or is he unable to come? If he doesn't appear, then the atheist will say, "See, I told you he couldn't come." And the theist will say, "Well, he didn't want to come." And the answer will be undecided if he doesn't come. But if he does come, then everything is irrefutably clear. So we all sign the paper that says that you agree that if he does come. So if you're in the middle or on this side or on that side, no matter how you're thinking, you'll sign the paper. If he does come, then the elderly Brahmana will give his daughter to the younger Brahmana in charity. Agreed? Everyone will sign? Yes? Yes? Yes, 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 yes. Okay. I also agree. And then the young Brahmana said, he acted. Because there comes a point where instead of talking, you have to act. So he immediately acted. And he's doing this, remember, he's doing this not so much because he wants the daughter for his wife, because he wants to protect the religious principles of the older Brahmana. So he never left the position of being a servant, because if his reason for doing it, if his motivation was to have the girl as his wife, then he's in the position of, I want to enjoy either her aristocracy, her wealth, or her. But he never got out of that mood of being a servant. This all came about because of his sincere serving mood to the elderly Brahmana, and it's continuing based on that serving mood. And he's humbly says that by virtue of the older Brahmana's piety, I'm going to call the deity. Not because I'm asking him and me. No. Very humble, very cultured, very aristocratic actually, and very wealthy. Most wealthy, because that the jewels of his faith are not easy to come by in this world. Such simple, pure faith that whatever happens, Krishna is going to protect me. Rotripte varanam tata. So, after the meeting, the young Brahmana started for Vrindavan. And upon arriving there, so nothing is told of his journey, but still it's a long way to Vrindavan. But upon arriving there, he first offered his respectful obeisances to the deity and then narrated everything in full detail. He said, "My Lord, you are the protector of Brahminical culture, and you are also very merciful. Therefore, kindly show your great mercy by protecting the religious principles of us two Brahmanas." My dear Lord, I am not thinking to become happy by getting the daughter as a bride. I'm simply thinking that the Brahmana has broken his promise, and that is giving me great pain. We'll read Prabhupada's purport. It was not at all, and I've gone over this point already, it was not at all the intention of the young Brahmana to get the daughter of the elderly Brahmana in marriage and thus enjoy material happiness and sense gratification. It was not for that reason that the young Brahmana went to Vrindavan to ask the Supreme Personality of Godhead to act as a witness. His only concern was that the elderly Brahmana had promised something. And if Gopal did not bear witness to that transaction, then the older Brahmana would incur a spiritual blemish. Therefore, the young Brahmana wanted protection and help from the deity. The young Brahmana was thus a pure Vaishnava, and he had no desire for sense gratification. He wanted only to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the older Brahmana, who was also a Vaishnava and very much devoted to the Lord. So despite the awkward position that the older Brahmana was in, the younger Brahmana continued to want to serve him. So the younger Brahmana continued also to speak to the deity. He said, "My dear sir, you are very merciful, and you know everything." Interesting, although he knew everything, he still told him everything that happened, because that's just the nature of the dealings. You know everything, and therefore kindly be a witness in this case. A person who knows things as they are and still does not bear witness becomes involved in sinful activities. So he's the lawyer on the side of the older Brahmana here, trying to convince the witness. He said, if you know the things and then you're asked to give a witness and speak the truth, then you're guilty if you don't participate and speak properly. See, this way he put pressure on him. You have to come, otherwise you'll be involved in sinful activities. Tal pape hai. Prabhupada's purport. The dealings between a devotee and the Lord are very simple. The young Brahmana said to the Lord, you know everything, but if you do not bear witness, you'll be involved in sinful activities. There's no possibility, however, of the Lord's being involved in sinful activities. A pure devotee, even though he knows everything of the Supreme Lord, can speak with him exactly as if he were a common man. Although the dealings between the Lord and his devotee are always very simple and open. There is formality. So, simple, open, but yet there is formality. All these things happen because of the connection between the Lord and the devotee. So you could see in his relationship with the Lord there was a familiarity, but there was awe and reverence too. My dear sir, my dear Lord, you have to come. Everyone will believe you. You're the Supreme Lord. But yet there was such a familiarity. He threatened him. Said, you have to come. But it was all done with devotion, with love and intimacy, and such deep faith. So there's no fault. When Bhishma at the last moments of his life, he was remembering, because at that time you want to be very careful about what you remember. So he was remembering his most cherished dealing with Krishna at the last moment of his life. And what was that dealing? That he was shooting arrows at Krishna, and they were hitting Krishna's body, and he was a great devotee of Krishna. But he had such a spirit of a warrior that was his most intimate dealing with Krishna, and Krishna was appreciating it so much that he became angry at Bhishma and picked up a wheel of a chariot which was like a chakra and went running at Bhishma. But that scene where Krishna was standing in front of Arjuna, who was as the chariot driver, and driving the chariot, and the dust on his face, and in a very serious mood, and Bhishma, he was so valiant and so warrior-like, and Kshatriya, he was such a Kshatriya, that he was remembering that as his most intimate dealing with Krishna, even though he's had so many intimate dealings with Krishna. And the most amazing part is that Krishna was accepting the arrows as Bhishma's offering. Krishna will accept whatever is offered with love, and he will accept nothing if it's not offered with love. So Krishna was even accepting the arrows because they were laden with the love of Bhishma, and Krishna was accepting the words, the words of the lawyer, Vakil boy, because they were filled with love, and we can't imitate this. But it pushes us to the point that we understand something about Krishna's nature and how submissive he becomes to the devotees who love him. And this is required if you want to understand what Vrindavan is like, what Braj is like, and what makes Vrindavan work. It is the prema of the devotees. And even Yogamaya, the spiritual energy that orchestrates all the dealings in Braj, in Vrindavan, it works in following the prema of the devotees. So really, the love of the devotees rules even Krishna. So that's how powerful love is, and we're on this path of devotion. We may have taken a half of a step, or a quarter of a step, or a giant step, or whatever, but it's a most wonderful path. So all these things happen. He can speak like this to the Lord because of the connection between the Lord and his devotees. And what is the connection? It's bhakti. Krishna's internal energy, bhakti, antaranga shakti. And then after the young Brahmana speaks like this to the deity, the next is Krishna kahe vipra tumi yaha swabhavani. My dear Brahmana, go back to your home and call a meeting of all the men. And that meeting, just try to remember me. And I shall certainly, avyabhava, I shall certainly appear there. And at that time, I shall protect the honor of both you Brahmanas by bearing witness to the promise. So what did he say? He said, you go there, just remember me, and I'll do something. So naturally we would expect him to say, whatever you say, my Lord, you are the Supreme Lord. But the young Brahmana didn't accept this proposal, this compromise proposal by the Lord. The young Brahmana replied, my dear sir, very politely, even if you appear there as a four-handed Vishnu deity, still none of those people will believe in your words. Only if you go there in this form of Gopal and speak the words from your beautiful face will your testimony be heard by all the people. Because, and there it was, it's written in black and white, that the Gopal deity was going to come, and everyone agreed to that. And that older Brahmana, even if a four-armed Vishnu form came, he'd say, no, you said Gopal would come. So only if you go there in your form as Gopal and speak the words from your beautiful face will your testimony be heard by all the people. Krishna Kai. Krishna replied, I've never heard of a deity walking from one place to another. How can I do that? He said, I'm a deity. And the young Brahmin replied, that's true, but how is it that you're speaking to me although you're a deity? I think he's caught him now. My dear Lord, you are not a statue. You are directly the son of Maharaj Nanda. And now, for the sake of the old Brahmana, you can do something you have never done before. Sri Gopalji then smiled and said, my dear Brahmana, just listen to me. I shall walk behind you, and in this way I shall go with you. So here's Prabhupada's purport to this person. The conversation between Lord Krishna and the Brahmana is proof that the Lord, in his Archamurti, or form made of material elements, is not material. For those elements, although separated from the Lord, are also a part of the Lord's energy, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita. So what word stands out in that sentence? What word do you remember? Material? Anyone else? Yes? Anyone else? I'll have to read it again, I think. Class is going too long. Okay, you ready? Ready? Okay. The conversation. Okay, what word do you remember? That made it a little easier. Between Lord Sri Krishna, and if you remember Lord Sri Krishna, that's good, and the Brahman is proof that the Lord in his Archamurti, or form made of material elements, is not material. For those elements, although separated from the Lord, are also part of the Lord's energy, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita. Any word stand out? Huh? Archamurti. One word. You only get one word. Oh, that's two words, but okay. Give you a discount. Proofs, what teeth? What word do you remember? One word. Energy. Part of. It's two words, but okay, we can't argue with Mataji. Yes? Separated. Form. Mine was proof also. This is proof. What does proof mean? Evidence. With evidence, yeah. This shows for sure. Huh? Definitely that the Lord in his Archamurti, or form made of material elements, is not material. It is proof. But it's proof if you have full faith in the Shastra. In the words of Kaviraj Goswami. Now why would we have full faith in this? Well, one reason is that Kaviraj Goswami heard all these pastimes from someone who was right there. He heard everything from Raghunath Das Goswami, and he also heard from, he incorporated two books especially. They were already written into to make his Caitanya Caritamrta. One was for the very early pastimes, he incorporated the Caitanya Caritamrta of Murari Gupta, who was personally present, and he wrote things down. So he personally saw all the things, and he wrote it down, and everyone accepted it at that time because he wrote it, and the other people who were present also accepted it. And then he also took very much from the writings of Kavi Karnapur, Paramananda Puri Das, who was especially empowered by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to become the greatest of Vaishnava poets. And you know how Mahaprabhu empowered him? Does anyone know? He didn't allow him to put his toe in his mouth. He pushed his toe into his mouth. And then that boy, when he was 7 years old, he began to compose Sanskrit poetry, beautiful Sanskrit poetry. So very much he took from Kavi Karnapur, and he also took from the two witnesses to Mahaprabhu's later pastimes of Swarup Damodar's writings and the personal association and prayers written by Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, who was present during this time. So there's a lot of authority there. Okay, I think I'm going just to see if there's any questions. Is there any questions? And then, yeah.
How can shooting an arrow if someone be loved?
If that was, we don't understand the mentality of a warrior. It's like the closest thing that we can imagine is when there's two powerful fighters, and that's what they're whole wrestlers, and and their whole life is expertise in wrestling. And when they're playing together, they're wrestling together even for a contest. It's not like they hate each other and they're fighting with each other. It's not like they hate each other. Maybe they're friends even. But they're giving what they have and offering it to the other. And let's see your expertise. Here's my expertise. So, and then after the match is over, they embrace, because it was just a game. So it was the way that true Kshatriyas would deal with each other. There would be honor and respect, but yet they would fight. So in this particular case, Krishna had to be on the other side, and Bhishma had to be on the other side. And there was a vow, and there's a long story that I've heard Prabhupada tell, that Bhishma had vowed, because Arjuna and Duryodhana, even though they were enemies, they had some honor. So when Duryodhana and his party was captured by a group of powerful Gandharvas, Arjuna saved them. So Duryodhana said, whatever you want, I'll give you in reciprocation with this. So Arjuna said, later I'll take it, not now. So later on in the Battle of Kurukshetra, the next day, Bhishma had vowed in the battlefield to destroy all the Pandavas, to kill them all. And he had 5 special arrows that were coated with mantras to kill each of the 5 Pandavas. And Duryodhana knew that his desire was going to be fulfilled, so he said, I'm going to keep these at night, overnight. So at that time, Arjuna came to him, because it's hard for us to understand, but they would fight in the day, and then in the evenings they would deal like regular people. It was, like friends or almost. They had such character. They didn't carry it over into the realm of petty hatreds. They had the pride of Kshatriyas. I will defeat you properly. So Krishna had told Arjuna that to take his benediction from Duryodhana now and ask for the 5 arrows. So Arjuna went there, and interestingly, Duryodhana said, he greeted him nicely, and what can I do for you? You've come to my tent. And Arjuna said, I want that benediction now that you promised me so long ago, that whatever I would ask you to fulfill, you'd give it to me. So he said, yes, whatever you want, I'll give you, even if it's the kingdom. They're fighting, and he said, I'll give you the kingdom now if you want. Whatever you want. And Arjuna said, no, I don't want the kingdom. What do you want? I want those 5 arrows. So when he said that, Duryodhana understood that Krishna is behind this. So the next day, Bhishmadev, who had promised on behalf of Duryodhana to kill the 5 Pandavas, because Duryodhana was teasing him, he was poking him and saying, because you love the Pandavas so much, therefore you're not fighting hard. You're not fighting hard, you favor them, you don't favor us. He was doing a little bit of mental, psychological manipulation. So Duryodhana, so Bhishma said, no, I'll kill them all tomorrow. And that's when the 5 arrows point came up. So when Bhishma heard this the next day, that Krishna had organized the losing of the 5 battles, he became more ferocious. And he said, I'm going to fight so hard tomorrow that Krishna's going to have, unless he breaks his own promise, and he promised to not take part in the battle, unless he breaks his own promise, I'm going to kill all the Pandavas, unless he personally comes to save them. So therefore, he wanted Krishna to break his own promise, to show how much he favors his devotees. So he fought so hard in the battle that Krishna had to break his promise, and he picked up the wheel and came to Bhishma, and Bhishma very happily surrendered. So I don't know if I answered your question, because you have to enter into the spirit of a Bhishma Dev, which isn't really possible for us to do. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives an example, though, but I won't repeat the example. It's too intimate. But he gives an example. Sometimes in the exchange of love between a husband and a wife, there's something that externally would appear to be violent, but it's just part of the exchange of love. Okay. Anyone else have any questions or comments? One little question. One little question. No? Linda? Muralidhar has at least a little question. Yes.
The question as much as this character of the young Brahmana is very amazing. Really cool. The way he thinks.
Yes, the character of the Brahmana is really pure devotee. And he's thinking always in terms of the other person. But interestingly enough, it's the character of the older Brahmana is also a pure devotee. But sometimes he was in a position where he had to break his word. But he was a pure devotee. He immediately agreed. He knew that Gopal would come. Yes.
Was Gopal visible?
When?
To other people when he was walking?
We're not even up to that point. You have to wait till next week to ask that question. I'll quickly Google it. Who's that deity walking behind you?
Maharaj, it's interesting that you say that the older brahmanas were so clearly compromised with issue of association. You could say some influencing.
You could say by his influence, the influence of the younger brahmana, the old brahmana, but it doesn't indicate that. That's often the case, that by association, that sincerity, like the common cold, is catching. But it doesn't indicate that there were two pure souls. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Yeah. Yes.
How can we balance between
Okay, please say that again. How could you balance between recognizing Krishna as the Supreme
and at the same time not so religion?
It's not a intellectual thing that you have to figure out. It depends on a relationship, the relationship with him. You can't imitate. You can't, because we could think that this is higher than just complete reverence. So therefore, I should act in a higher way, and that will make me higher than I am. But it doesn't work like that. So my answer to that would be, it's not an intellectual adjustment that has to be made. Now I'm ready for the next stage, but it's just natural if it happens. So sometimes just think of the deity that you're most attracted to in the whole world. And have you ever seen, is that deity firmly in your mind? Everyone think of that deity that you're most attracted to. And if you think of the beauty of that deity, the time when you saw that deity, somehow or another he revealed more of his beauty to you. And then naturally what escapes when one becomes a little overpowered by the beauty, a little bit of transcendence overpowers us, then naturally some prayer would come in a very spontaneous way, for example. So that's the kind. So when it spontaneously comes, then you'll say something that's spontaneous, and it could be, I don't know what, but it could be on that level. But the affection overpowers the awe and reverence, and in Vrindavan, the relationship between the Brijbasis and the devotees is on that level. They're even aware of his power, but it's just inconsequential in a sense, because the sweetness of their relationship, they're always overpowered by the sweetness of their attraction in the relationship. So it can just happen if one becomes overpowered. But it should be natural, not. I should do it in an imitative way. Okay, any last question? Okay, we shall end. Sri Caitanya Caritamrta ki jai, Sri Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami Maharaj ki jai, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, younger Brahmana, older Brahmana, Sakshi Gopal ki jai. But the older Brahmana's eldest son, nothing. But he's part of the drama also, but still, no ki jai. But without him being there, it wouldn't happen. It wouldn't be as much fun. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.